Hello everybody and welcome to another of our Facebook Live Friday sessions. Today I have with me Margaret and Yvonne from the People's Friend team. We also have Carly in the background, but she does have a cold today, so if you hear any sniffing and coughing, it's poor Carly. We're sending her all our best wishes and have fed her lots of vitamin C. So today we are going to be talking about the only thing that we can possibly talk about today, which is our fantastic People's Friend 150th year anniversary special collector's edition. It went on sale this Wednesday. We are incredibly proud of this magazine, and today we want to tell you a little bit about what's inside it, how we created it, and what we love about it. I think we all agree it is the best thing we've ever worked on in our time on the Friend, and we're getting some really good feedback already from readers. So before we get started looking inside it, there are a few messages that I want to get across, just really based on all of the comments and questions that we've had since this went out on sale. There's been loads of interest on Facebook already, and I know that lots of you have questions about where you can obtain it. So let's start with some practical information. It costs £6.99 if you buy it in the UK. It's a little bit more if you buy it from overseas because there's postage involved. It is a special collector's edition. That means we've printed far fewer than we would of the normal weekly Friend. It is a collector's item. It's not going to stick around forever. So if you want your copy, the first thing to say is go out and find it sooner rather than later. But secondly, it's not in every shop in which you would find the normal weekly People's Friend. It's in selected newsagents and retailers, but not all of them. So if you want to buy it in a supermarket, for example, you'll probably find it in a bigger version of the regular stores like Tesco and Asda and Sainsbury and Morrison's, but not in the smaller shops that they have. It's in W.H. Smith High Street. That's a good place to get it. But really, the best way to get your hands on a copy is to order it direct from us. It's really easy to do so. You just go online to www.thepeoplesfriend.co.uk and click on shop. If you're overseas, you can order it direct from us and we will ship it anywhere in the world. Just make sure that you click on overseas delivery. And we've had a few questions this week about will it be on sale in the shops in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, South Africa and other places. Yes, it will be, but in very limited numbers, and also it's going to take a while to reach you. It only left the printers last Thursday. So you can imagine it's going to take a little bit of time to make its way to New Zealand. So again, if you want it and you want it soon, order it from us. It is selling really, really quickly, so I would urge you not to hang about. In fact, here in this building, we have staff members wanting to buy it and they can't get their hands on a copy because it's already sold out here. So I would recommend that you get your order in quick. So 150 years, it's a lot of history. When we started making this magazine, we knew we wanted to tell the amazing story of the People's Friend throughout the last 150 years. But it's a lot of information to get into a magazine, even one as thick as this, and it is 148 pages crammed with reading. So what we did was we started with a plan. This is the very plan. This is how we broke down 150 years of history and archive material into a magazine that made sense. So you'll see it's colour-coded for all the different eras that we chose to focus on, and each era has its own theme. We've written more about this and the process of making this magazine on our website. So if you're interested in that, you can go on there and have a good look. From this, after a lot of research, a lot of decision making, and a lot of design and editorial input, we came up with this, which is the paper dummy of the finished product, which is pretty much the whole magazine as it was going to be printed, but in proof form. Once we were happy with all of that, we sent it to the printers, and just a week later, here's what we got back. It has the most amazing back cover as well, if you're interested in having a look. And we can just open it and show you a few of the pages at random. But now I'm going to ask Margaret and Yvonne to pick one part of this that they love the most. So Margaret, what is your favourite thing in this whole publication?
That is so hard.
It's a mean question, isn't it?
Well, overall, I loved watching the illustrations come to life.
Yes.
Sarah brought them. And
do you just want to explain a little bit to everybody watching what you mean when you say that Sarah brought them to life? Because there's a good example, isn't it?
Well, here we are. We found this, and it's an illustration from a people's friend. I think that was in 1880, and it's girls working in a match factory.
Yes.
And it's amazing that you can see all the detail. Clever Sarah, our art illustrations editor, she was able to put it into colour, and you'll notice a really sympathetic use of colour, and suddenly
it comes to life, doesn't it?
Because
Because that's something that maybe we hadn't appreciated when we started this project, was that the early magazines are all black and white. So all of the illustrations are black and white, and over 150 years have faded to quite a lot of brown sepia tones. So to actually breathe new life into them by colouring them, I think was such an inspired thing to do. And the magazine is full of them. There's absolutely gorgeous ones here from the war.
It still stays true to the actual original artwork. That's what I like.
Yes, because I think the colours that have been used to colour up the illustrations are really in keeping. They look quite faded and vintage without, they're not too garish and modern, are they? I think they look really good.
She's done really well. So that's one of my favourite
So that's one of
parts.
your favourite. What about you, Yvonne?
I think the Victorian era has to be my favourite.
Yes.
Because things have changed so much, and to actually delve into that era, you get absorbed in the times.
Yeah.
It was just fabulous.
The magazines of that era really captured the spirit of adventure and exploration and invention, didn't they? I mean, this was fantastic with the flying machines and the skates. These were skates with wheels that you strapped onto your shoes, and the invention of the bicycle, the fashions, the Victorians.
Really, the etiquette of the day as well. That has changed so much.
It was such
where the
a
women's place was in the home.
Yes.
And it's just amazing to go back and actually, you feel like you can live your life through their eyes as it was at the time. And it was great just to immerse yourself in it, and how much it's changed. Yeah, it's incredible.
I agree.
Yeah, I think definitely I have a soft spot for the Victorian part of this as well. Yeah, it's such a difficult thing to do. I mean, look at these amazing covers, aren't they fantastic?
It is beautiful, isn't it?
It's such a difficult thing to do, to pull out one thing that you like.
I enjoyed working on this page because I learned so much about the way we used to put the magazine together. So that's a favourite of mine.
I don't know if you can see this one at home, but this is a page all about the invention of hot metal printing and how the French used to be produced in the Victorian era, and this illustration here is one of the linotype machines that would have been cutting edge in their day. And when we think about the amazing computerized mammoth printing presses that we have nowadays, I mean, this is a really excellent one. I like this one too. I have to say, this is probably my favourite thing. I absolutely love William C. Honeyman, who was known as the Violin Man, and was one of the great characters from the People's Friend archive that we discovered. So he definitely deserves to be known by a wider audience, doesn't he? So I think if I was picking out one thing, it would be the Violin Man. And there is an intriguing story within our archive that may or may not link the Violin Man to Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle. So if you want to know more about that particular mystery, you need to go and buy your copy and let me see far too much of it and find out for yourself. But one of the things I enjoyed about working on this was all of the mysteries that we were able to solve and stories that we were able to uncover. So I thought that was a fascinating part of our history. So much that we didn't know about who the early editors were and how the covers came to be under the name J. Campbell Kerr. So many great little details that we've been able to answer. And there are a few left unresolved which is very much in keeping with the spirit of good fiction. But you don't want to explain everything, do you? So we're remaining true to our roots. So we are really fortunate to have fantastic colleagues in the archives department here at DC Thomson, and we could not have made this magazine without them. But Margaret is a particular fan of the archives and loves going up to the collection and having a good look through it. And Margaret, you've brought some bits and pieces along, haven't you, to show everybody? Do you want to explain what that tiny little copy is on top there?
Oh, this one.
Yes. Look at this.
I'm not sure if you can see.
Up close and see.
Now, this is from 1933, and we know the history of this. They were made, it's an absolute exact facsimile of People's Friend from August the 5th, 1933. You can see the back, you can see adverts, golden shred, marmalade. And this was set out because the Great Glasgow exhibition of that year, we had a stand, and we made some of these to hand out as mementos of the day, but they were so popular that people started writing in and saying, where can I get them? You know, so we had to print more, and we started selling them. But
They're
this is
so cute, aren't they? They're just adorable. And they're a complete facsimile in every way. That one's got an advert for the Scots magazine on the front.
It is lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
You might need a magnifying glass.
Absolutely, and I need one for that.
And then you've got some of the knitting
leaflets
as well.
Yeah, and in the special edition, you'll see how many free gifts we gave away.
That's right, there's a feature about that, isn't there?
You can see that lovely Paris style, very up to date. This would have been from 1950, maybe.
I think that's still relevant today.
So do I. That's rather gorgeous,
it's beautiful, just classic style.
We sometimes, again, we have mysteries because they're not dated, so we have to squirrel away at the...
Yes, that's right. And things like the annuals, they didn't have dates on them, so that they're really difficult. And sometimes people will send one in that they found at home and say, when was it published? And it's really hard to track down, isn't it?
I'm looking at this. This is one of my favourites. It's a calendar. It's a souvenir calendar, but it's from... You see, it's for 1937, and unfortunately, in the time, it was a coronation calendar, but in the time between making it and putting it out there for the readers, the king abdicated. This was the Wallace Simpson time. So we ended up saying, we think you ought to get it just as a memento of a very unusual time.
They obviously didn't want to lose all that money after printing them.
So that's very special to me, that marks a piece of our history.
Nice. And down here, I don't know if you can see it, this is a People's Friend biscuit, and it actually has the People's Friend stamped onto the shortbread, which is just brilliant.
Great.
What else have you got, Margaret?
Well, some other things like People's Friend Book of Transfers, and then these are various covers you might like to see. There's one
look at that one, Diana and Prince Harry.
With Harry. It's a lovely picture, isn't it? And that was our cover. We didn't do many with people on the front, so this is quite unusual.
Yes, and it's not only is it people on the front, but it's not an illustration, which is almost unheard of. So that in itself makes that one really interesting.
Absolutely. Here's Miss Naffy from 1945. Again, telling our readers keep up with.
So this was the era when we put an advert on the front cover.
It was.
Look at this. That's one. I love that. Oh.
And again, some of these may appear. This was a Careless Talk. Again, it's an advert. This is for Rinso washing spuds.
Yvonne, you did quite a lot, didn't you, around the wartime adverts? It's really interesting in the Second World War.
Absolutely.
Tell us what the adverts were doing then.
Well, they were basically following on from just the whole war theme and using it in their advertising.
So it was a lot of propaganda going on there, wasn't it? It was really blatant too.
Absolutely, and they got away with it.
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah.
But it's a good, it encapsulates the era just through the ads, not even through the editorial.
That's right, and you can let everybody see.
Because people were still they were still having to get on with their lives.
That's right.
And deal with what was around them.
Wartime ads that packed a punch. And they did, didn't they? I mean, there's Heinz, Gibbs toothpaste, Colgate.
That's it,
Yeah.
And labour saving and energy saving tips as well.
Yes, and using messages from the war to really sell their products as well. So Basically, it was fair game for advertisers.
Absolutely.
Oh, and Margaret, these are lovely.
Oh, well, I just picked
Yeah.
a selection. Here are some beautiful, beautiful.
Look at that lovely dress.
Yeah,
It
this
is
is from
gorgeous, isn't it?
1953. It's so elegant. And you feel they must have been happy that the war was behind them and they didn't have to worry so much about clothing rations and
Mhm.
coupons.
Mhm.
But during the war, here's a People's Friend cover for your gas mask.
Oh wow.
Was it knitted?
I think, no, it was
No.
oilcloth.
Stitched.
It was
Fabulous.
oilcloth. So again, just if we've got to carry them, why not make them
Yes.
pretty?
And you know, that's a theme that comes through right down through the history, isn't it? That the Friend was very adaptive to the times.
Yes.
So if people needed to have gas masks, we would give them a pattern to cover them. If there were food shortages, we would tell them how to cook with not very many ingredients. All through the years, we've done that. We've very much reacted to the times. So it's just fascinating. And that's what gives this an edge, because it's not just the history of the magazine, it's really a history of what life was like for women in the UK for 150 years. It's the small details of their lives that tell their story, really, more than anything, right down to what they were wearing. There were bits that really brought that home to me throughout. So in the very early days, and we didn't include this in the magazine because we just didn't have room, but there was an article about verses that were suitable to be written on the tombstones of infants, which obviously reflected the huge high rates of infant mortality. So incredibly sad. Then during the First World War, there were fashion items about mourning hats because so many people had lost loved ones in the war. So right the way through, it's just like this little social snapshot of what life was like. It's absolutely fascinating.
It is like a time capsule that you're opening up for each era.
Yes,
And it's fabulous to be able to do that through this, isn't
that's
it?
right. It really is.
I think it's absolutely unique.
Yes.
I can't think of any other way we could explore this social history.
No, and it is very much all about the women. It's what they were doing, and back in the early days, it was advice to how to be a good wife, how to run your house, how to not make too much noise in case you upset your husband, and things like that. But it continued right the way through to capture the lives of women in a way that I think you're right, Margaret, is unique. Makes it fascinating. You've got some more amazing fashions.
Here's 1909.
Look at that.
This is
It's
for
ready,
Eleanor's
ready.
wives and daughters. Just wonderful. And look at the little girl. She's dressed up. So
Beautiful.
But I thought I'd bring this just to show how we've changed. Again, this is 1909, but this is the cover, and it couldn't be more different.
No.
So, and you have, the cover article is about some great earthquakes, bizarrely.
What is a volcano?
Yes. And here's a favourite.
Oh,
The Dear
Queen
Queen
Mother.
Mum. And
It's a lovely
just
illustration.
beautiful. That was from 2000. That was Millennium. But I'm sorry, we're all out of chronological order. Here is
That makes it more fun, I think.
here is 1945. So we didn't know would we have been coming to an end then?
Yes,
But she
it
would
have
still have
yes.
been. There might still have been
Mhm.
forces,
Mhm.
servicemen and women. And there's the naffy girl working as ever.
It did actually change the working life for women as well. It's
Yes,
social
it
change
did.
at that time was a big
That's
thing
it.
as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think after both wars, there was a huge change.
Yes. I'm just going to show you a couple of these of my favourites from 1946. I just think these are
Those.
It's
so
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Aren't they? The photography is beautiful.
I have to tell you, I've tried to knit these gloves.
Did
Not
you
very-
get
Well,
better than we would have done?
Yes, absolutely.
I did well till I tried to sew them up, and I found I had 3 left-handed gloves. Something went wrong. But I'm sure Liz, our craft editor, would have kept me right. Annie S. Swan there,
Oh,
our
yes.
favourite, dear Annie, in one of her, it's a new serial. Whenever she brought out a new serial, we made a lot of it.
Yes. Well,
We
she
knew
was
she was popular.
probably the most popular People's Friend contributor ever, I would
Probably.
suggest. And Annie does get her own feature in this publication too, Well, I'll find Annie, will I?
That
And we
would,
could
yeah.
have a look. But
How many
she,
years did she write for?
65.
yeah, she was
long
massively
She was,
prolific.
she was still writing her last serial when she died. So
Yeah, she's on page 74.
there she is.
Really one of the forgotten women of history, without a doubt. Probably one of the most prolific novelists the UK has ever seen. And she just doesn't get the credit for it. She
No.
really doesn't. And yet she was a colossus of her time.
Sure.
And also a very unusual woman in that she was a working woman at a time when it was frowned upon for married women to work. She supported her husband through medical school. She was the breadwinner. And she was massively influential during the war as well. And she travelled to America to try and get America to join the war. And she also went to the front, raised money, helped nurse soldiers, visited all of the YMCA huts that she campaigned to provide. So what a woman Annie S. Swan was, and she does deserve to be
Absolutely.
remembered. So yeah.
I think she was like one of these celebrities at that time when she opened a fete or a bazaar that they just thronged. They
Yes.
just mobbed her, just try and talk to her or wave or just touch her hands.
She was hugely popular, and she's been out of print for years, but you do still sometimes find her books in second-hand bookshops. So when I was in Wigtown last year, which has got lots and lots of second-hand bookshops, I was going around looking for Annie, and I did find her in quite a few places. So she is still out there if anybody's keen to see. Of course, we've got lots of Annie books in our collection in the archives. And also she was the forerunner of the People's Round Annual. It was the Annie S. Swan Annual, which is also, I've got a little snapshot of it here on the back, just in tribute to Annie. So she's definitely one of the characters to explore. She is. Yeah. But it was a real labour of love putting this together, wasn't it? I mean, hours of painstaking research.
Yes, it was lovely though. You just immerse yourself in the back copies. They were great to look through, weren't they?
Yeah.
Our main problem was what to leave out.
Yes.
We could have gone on and on. You just needed to pick up
To barrel to pick it up, I know, from the newsagents. There is so much fantastic material there, isn't there?
There is.
But what people maybe don't understand is that none of the People's Friend archive until very recently exists in computerised form. So when we say we were in our archives department, we really were physically in the archives department with gigantic leather-bound volumes of magazines that many of which had not been opened for over 100 years. We were the first people to set eyes on them in all that time. So they're incredibly well preserved actually for how old they are. But,
It's a real privilege actually to be able to look back over them.
it is.
And I'm actually missing it out of my weekly.
Oh,
You get used to going there and delving back in time. You switch off from everything else, and it was
And
fabulous.
it was so
Yeah,
interesting,
It
wasn't
really
it?
was.
Yeah, I know. So that was great, just going into the archives and losing yourself and not knowing what you might find, because it's not all catalogued yet. And there's lots of stuff that we're still finding, which is just amazing to think that we're part of this incredible story.
I think that was part of it, that we thought we knew our story until we really started on this.
Yes.
And then there were things we found out with every visit.
That's right.
Maybe it wasn't the first time we did this. It was 20 years earlier.
Yes, or maybe that person wasn't the first editor as we had thought. So there is a really interesting story around who was the first editor of the People's Friend. I'm not going to spoil it for you, you have to read it for yourself. But suffice to say that it's not what we expected to find, and it's not the perceived wisdom that had come down the years to us. So that was a really fascinating piece of the puzzle to put in place. So it's interesting that you're missing it.
I am.
Because you
Absolutely.
did, Yvonne in particular, spend hours in that archive with your
I did.
head in those old books.
It becomes part of your working life, but it was a part that I really, really enjoyed. You did, the hours just flew by when you were there. And yeah, kind of at a loss now. I'm missing that.
And you said that the Victorian period was your favourite.
Absolutely loved that. Just probably because it was so different between then and now, and it's amazing how much it's changed in a relatively short space of time.
Yes.
And women, you know, obviously have the vote and all the rest of it. When you read now, when you look back and see what their life was like then,
Yes.
we've come on leaps and bounds.
Yes, we really have. But the whole issue of Women and the Friend is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because right at the beginning of the magazine, we talk about why this particular magazine should have been started in this particular city at that particular time. And what I hadn't appreciated was the history of Dundee itself, and how unusual a city in 1869 Dundee was, because it was known really as the City of Women. And more than any other city in the UK, working women were valued in Dundee, not because they had anything special to offer in particular, but just because Dundee was the home of the jute industry, and the jute industry was the only industry in the UK in 1869 that was allowed to employ married women. And they were cheaper to employ than the men, so that was why so many of them were working. But what it did was it gave rise to feisty women who went out to work when their husbands stayed at home and looked after things at home, who had their own income as well. And so the People's Friend in the early days very much reflected that it, although it did have advice for housewives and etiquette and all the rest of it, it was quite forward thinking in its presentation of what women could do. And it was very noticeable after the First World War that the Friend was very much on the side of women being allowed to continue in the world of work that they had enjoyed so far. So we've already spoken about our lovely William C. honeymoon, but there's one other part of this that I want to just talk about, because it again is something that I really liked, and it does come from those same early years when he was around, which was, do you remember, Margaret? I think you did quite a lot of work on this one, which was about the world of the readers and what they were doing in their working lives.
Yes.
Yes.
We found letters from all over the place, and it was quite marvellous. Some of them were maybe from the Hebrides, from islands that are no longer inhabited. So we found these tiny little snapshots of history and jobs that just aren't done anymore.
That's
so,
right.
Cracking bone one, I remember that being mentioned.
Pushing the boundaries, wasn't it? No.
Letters from far and near.
That's it. That's the one.
I
love this one, because this is a very simple spread, if you can see it, but it's letters that readers themselves sent in 1924 about what their working day was like.
Yes.
And it's just the most amazing snapshot, as you said, of what it was like. There are girls who had to leave their homes in the Hebrides and move to the city for work. There's somebody who was working as a secretary and a photographer. They were just fantastic.
So it's hard missing out with too many letters.
But I think more than anything, this one brought those readers to life for me. You could see what they were like. And also, like you were saying, Yvonne, how different life was for them compared to...
And that is reflected in their letters, and our readers' letters are very much a part of the magazine as well. So it's nice that we have looked at that and touched upon that. These were quite new inventions as well, so it was good to see that unfolding, like the typewriter.
That's right.
How far the camera came on and the changes there.
Yeah. I think that was a good thing as well that was included, was the timeline running throughout, so you could see what was happening in the wider world in relation to the stages the Friend was at in its history. And when you think, when we go right back to the beginning, to 1869, the first item in the timeline is the opening of the Suez Canal. No, that's the Friend was around when the Suez Canal opened. That really brings it home to you, doesn't it? What a huge span of history it covers. So I think we're almost out of time now. We're going to have to say goodbye. Hello to everybody who's joined us today. We've been reading your comments. We've got Vicky in Australia, Jane, Bethany, Mary, Virginia, Georgia, hello. Hope you've enjoyed our chat. Oh, and there's lots more. My goodness, we've scrolled down them all and just seen you all. Thank you so much for joining us. If you don't already have your copy, please remember what I said at the beginning and get your order in as fast as you can. If by any chance you have ordered it and it hasn't arrived, please be assured they're in the post. But they did only leave the printer last Thursday, so It is taking us a little bit of time to get all the thousands out that have already been ordered. So when it arrives, I promise you it will be worth it. I'm sure you will enjoy it. But if you have any comments at all to make on it, please let us know, get in touch, and we'll be back next Friday. Bye.
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 I'm sure the readers will love that.